Hi everyone, welcome back. So the last several weeks I've been doing a lot of very sort of technical tutorials, how to paint different colors, painting metal, stuff like that. And I know that's really useful for a lot of people, but sometimes, you just kind of feel like relaxing and doing something a little crazy, a little out there, painting some ridiculous colors, some polka dots, some stripes, just letting loose basically and going totally crazy. And luckily I have absolutely the perfect figure for that. I have got this guy. This is a landsknecht figure from Foundry, and this week we're going to be painting him, and I have already got him all prepped. So I painted him with gray enamel. I'm using gray this week because he's got a lot of bright colors on him and he's going to look better, I think, with a gray undercoat. I've also finished his face already in the way that I've described before. So landsknecht were sort of a Renaissance era sort of mercenary warrior, if in case you don't know, and they were famous for their really gaudy, outrageous, kind of over-the-top clothing. It was very spectacular and in very bright colors that we would consider pretty ridiculous looking today. And they were also famous for carrying, well, they didn't always, but they were famous for carrying a very long two-handed sword, which was sort of their trademark. So this is who we're going to paint today. And this is, if you've ever wondered how to paint pink in some really crazy colors, then this is definitely the tutorial for you.
The first thing that I had to do when I started working on the landsknecht was decide on what color combination I wanted. Even though landsknecht can potentially be really bright colored and have really crazy color combinations, you still have to decide what colors you're going to use and decide where the different colors are going to go on his costume. And I decided pretty early on that I was going to use pink, blue, and sort of a creamy white as the main color. So I'm starting out here by painting the blue onto his costume, and I'm going to put the blue, one place I'm going to put the blue here is down in sort of the slits in his sleeves. I think a dark color works very well in this particular area. It makes for a good contrast with the outer sleeves, which is going to be in a brighter pink shade. And you can see also the other area that's going to be blue is going to be his cod piece, and also I guess it's sort of a garter that he wears around his right leg. And the colors that I used specifically for this blue, I used the Foundry Triad French blue, which is really nice in the sleeve slits because it's so dark, but it's actually, the other problem is that it's so dark, so on the places like the cod piece and the garter, I felt like it was just too deep a blue. So I, for the sort of the final highlight, I mixed some Tomb Blue medium, also from a Foundry Triad, into it, and I'm using that to highlight areas like the garter and the cod piece. And for a final highlight on those areas, sort of for lining and stuff, I just used some pure Tomb Blue right out of the bottle. After painting the blue, I then move on to painting the white areas on the figure, which include his tights, mostly his tights. And for that I am using the Foundry Boneyard Triad, but I'm not using the shade color of Boneyard here because it's just too dark a base, and if I put that on first, then I'll just have to do more work to get it up to the lighter color I want it to be. So I'm starting out with the medium shade, and then I'm going to apply the light shade over top of that, and then white to as the sort of the highlight color. And then once I've done that, I'm going to use the Boneyard shade, but I'm going to thin it down a little bit, and I'm going to go back in and put that sort of around the edges or in sort of the seams of the tights, because they have sort of seams in the back, and in areas where I need it to be darker, because that's a lot easier than building up, in this case, from a base of that color. After finishing the white, I move on to painting the pink, and for that I'm using the Weinstein Red Triad from Foundry. And I am applying this sort of to the bottom half of his right leg under the garter, and then also to his fairly voluminous sleeves here. And I'm just going to use the normal 3 colors, and then after that I'm going to mix some white into the the Weinstein light color to add an even higher highlight to some of the really poofy areas on his sleeve to really make them pop, and it gives them also kind of a neat kind of silky, shiny, glossy effect, which looks good on this kind of fabric. After finishing the sleeves, I'm going to move on and paint some stripes on one of his stockings, not both, just one, because this guy is, really flamboyant and out there like that. And I'm going to be using the same colors that I used before, so the stockings are going to have a red stripe, or a pink stripe followed by a blue stripe, and then followed by a white stripe, and that's going to alternate all the way around his stocking. And I'm going to be using exactly the same colors and the same high highlights on those colors that I used when I painted those colors in other locations. But it's easier to go and do this step last, obviously, because it's just nicer to work off of the white base color. After finishing the stripes, I went ahead and worked on painting the hat, the belt, and the shoes, and I decided that was probably not interesting enough to show you. I used the Foundry Charcoal Gray Triad to do that, so I ended up with sort of a nice dark gray shade on those elements. And then after that, I went and base coated the areas that were going to be leather, which is the scabbard and his sort of the jerkin that he's wearing, and I used Vallejo German camouflage black brown to do that, because it's a really nice, really deep brown color, and it makes a great base. And so now what I'm doing is kind of highlighting up those leather areas, and I am using Foundry Bay Brown Triad to do that. And what you want to do to get a good leather effect that's nice and subtle is use a nice dark color, and then what you want to do to make it look really good is the areas that would wear on that leather there, you're going to use a higher brown color, so that you just end up with a few very sort of worn areas, and I'm going to paint those using the highest bay brown highlight, and then also medium spear shaft. And I kind of apply that. You want to apply that a little bit first by blending it lightly, and then applying some stipples, kind of little tiny spots around those wear areas, around collars and edges and stuff, and that'll give a nice kind of sort of worn leather effect. Now I'm working on the shiny kind of gold brass area. So he has sort of a chain around over his shoulder, and also the scab or the hilt of his sword and the pommel. And for that I mixed the camo, the German camo dark brown with some Vallejo bronze as a base coat for those areas. And now I'm highlighting those areas using Vallejo old gold. And once I've done that, I will take that color and also mix a little bit of silver into it for the really, really high highlights. Oh, I also forgot to mention earlier that he has sort of a strap holding his hat on, and sort of also the grip on his sword. I just did that very quickly using the Foundry raw hide triad, which is really useful for those kind of small areas that you want to look like very light, very worn leather. For the final step, I'm going to paint his sash and the feather on top of his hat, and I'm going to use the Foundry Ochre Triad to do it, so it's a nice bright yellow color. The only thing you have to watch out for here is the highlight shade of this color is not really lighter than the middle shade, it's just brighter, if that makes sense. So if you want it to get actually a lighter color as the highlight, then you need to use something else, and I'm going to be using medium boneyard for that. To really have a high highlight. And on the feather, I'm going to go even a step higher and use just white, because, you know, a feather is very, very shiny, and you want to have that really kind of shiny light effect up there, especially because it's on top of his head. So that's me now. I'm just finishing up those last highlights, and that's really just about all for this figure. He's pretty much done, and I think he's kind of been a nice diversion from some of my other painting tutorials. Sometimes you just want to do something crazy and have a little bit of fun. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like it, share it, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and definitely in the comments let me know what you think. And tell me what things you'd like to see next. I'm really open to anything, and I really, really do want to hear from you, because it is important. That way I know what kind of videos I should be making in the future. So thanks again, and I will see you next time.